So let's have a human conversation with Tucker in Iowa, if we may. Tucker, are you there?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, we can.
Hi,
so glad to hear your voice. Glad you're here. What's on your mind?
Yay. So first of all, it's Tucker, formerly known as D in Iowa.
Okay, thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
Glad to be speaking to you again.
What I actually identify as is an agnostic anti-theist. Anti-theist in the sense of being against Christian nationalism and encroachment of religion into our government and school. But I am still kind of I do still have some spiritual beliefs, or supernatural, as Richard likes to prefers.
I think that's an important distinction, and we can sort of get into why, but walk me through, I guess, your sort of viewpoint here.
My viewpoint as it pertains to what?
Well, when you say that you have some supernatural beliefs, and maybe you also use the word spiritual to describe those beliefs, what is it that you're referring to?
Well, I have had experiences in what at first glance seems to have been communications with my dead father. And noticing a couple of really interesting things that happened to my mother and sister as well from my father. I still believe my best friend is psychic. And it's not that I willy-nilly fall down the rabbit hole with these things. Go ahead.
Well, I guess what I'm interested in here is why we're referring to these ideas as supernatural. Like, I think I take your meaning, but I also feel like that term supernatural sort of implies that it isn't real and that it's not natural, that it's somehow outside of something. Why are these not just natural phenomena? You know, which isn't to say that we can or can't speak to the dead. Obviously, like, we can start to deconstruct those notions if we need to. But what gives you the idea that these are supernatural beliefs, and how are they distinct from, I guess, natural beliefs? And why have these categories?
Well, bluntly, because there's at least a couple of people that's I suppose you could say are kind of in a leadership position, or at least highly looked up to, who made the distinction with me that instead of spiritual, I should be using the word supernatural.
Do you think there's a difference between those terms? I mean,
comes on.
The way that you would normally use those two words, are they different, or do you resist against using those words interchangeably?
Well, I have been since as part of my my communication, what I called in about is that some people really do take a very hard line against anything spiritual or supernatural. My definition of supernatural would be like ghosts or aliens or
those are some categories. What's the definition that unites them together?
Well, like I said, it's been, strongly communicated to me from some folks that that they are separate. But what I'm trying to get to is that, those people who I've spoken with and that, they take a real hard line against any type of spiritual or supernatural belief. And so I'm only right now just kind of getting up the courage to be out there with the community and say that I still have some spiritual beliefs. I kind of feel like you've given me the permission to use that word now instead of supernatural.
I definitely don't want to declare myself the arbiter of what words mean. I can tell you that I hold beliefs or operate in practices that I would describe as spiritual, sure, but I don't see any of that as having a lack of like materialistic truth or not standing up to an empiricist worldview or an empirical worldview. It seems to me, and I know we're kind of flirting with a couple of different words and some very loose definitions, but as we dive into it, the sense that I'm taking away, the understanding that I'm gaining here, Tucker, is that there are things that you believe in that people around you are telling you aren't real. And that the like unifying definition of supernatural as we're applying it here are just things that other people dismiss as being made up. And to me, that would not fall under the definition of spirituality. That's another conversation that we can hold off on for just a moment. But how do you respond to the notion that at least if you are taking these insights from other people, that you are perhaps holding two categories of beliefs in your mind, one which you recognize as real and one which other people do not recognize as real?
Yes. So Christy, yes, that's a pretty good summation. Yes.
Yeah. So not to oversimplify it, but why believe in things that aren't real, or at least that other people don't believe are real? Or maybe another way of thinking about it is, if you believe that all of these things are in fact true and real, why have separate categories?
Honestly, Christy, I don't have an answer to that.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I mean, we can get into all the complexities of Gnosticism and of epistemology and these sorts of notions, but what we believe to be true is somewhat intuitive. It is on at least some level based on how an idea makes us feel. And I think it's worth really examining and asking the question, are these beliefs grounded in reality? Do they hold up to examination? Is there a like literal type of truth to it? I don't know. Scott, can you help offer any clarity here? I know that we're kind of swimming in some like very vague language.
Right. Tucker, I'm curious, in the notes here for the call screener, they said that you, some in the atheist skeptic community take a very hard line against any type of spiritual beliefs, and it can be very hard to be authentic. I'm curious as to what would you think would be the appropriate response if you were talking to a skeptic and you presented a belief, maybe you, like you said, you believe that your friend is a psychic. What do you think would be the appropriate amount of pushback that a skeptic should give you?
Well, the some of the skeptics that I'm referencing describe some of my spiritual beliefs and experiences. They describe them as idiotic, unrational, a lot of negative words, wasting my time, then you're not really an atheist or a skeptic if you believe this stuff. And honestly, whenever I'm asked, I do not just use the word atheist because I am not. I have not crossed over to that absolute definition of I have no evidence for spiritual things.
Okay.
Sure.
And so you would, sorry, go ahead, Christy.
Well, I suppose I was just going to say that, whether we divide atheism into like hard atheism or separate it out from agnosticism or any of those things, I do think it's worth pointing out that atheism doesn't have a position, so to speak, about the existence of aliens. We do associate atheism with skepticism, with rationality. And I think that some of those belief systems might push back on whether or not we are able to commune with the dead and some of these things. But again, we're really getting into all of these labels. And my ultimate curiosity, Tucker, is why you would believe in something that most people seem to believe isn't real, and whether or not you yourself believe it to be quote unquote real. And what does that word real really mean, or what is it doing in that sentence?
Okay, understood. So I feel like this conversation has turned away from my original intent.
Okay.
And I appreciate you guys' stance on, what is real and what is not, and why would I continue to believe. And the statement that that you made, Christy, that most people would be skeptical or not believe my experiences, kind of a ad populum statement.
Yeah, no, that's fair to say. So I'm not necessarily trying to destroy your logic, but I am interested in why you would hold these beliefs that may or may not hold or pass the like smell test of rationality.
Do you consider yourself to be skeptic?
I do.
Okay. How would you say that you apply that skepticism to your own beliefs? If you feel like other people are being maybe unfairly, overly critical, earlier I asked you what would be the appropriate response, but maybe more specifically, what I could ask you is, what are you applying to your own beliefs? If you consider yourself to be part of the skeptic community, and I think that you are, I would be curious as to how you self-apply that. How are you skeptical of your own beliefs? And if so, are you meeting your own threshold of rationality?
Yes, because um, because I am continuously looking for ways to falsify those beliefs. The belief that I've experienced something spiritual or supernatural, the belief that, you know, that I think psychics are real. I'm constantly trying to put those to the test, and find a naturalistic reason for them.
Do you share that if somebody were to come up to you and say, I don't accept your beliefs. I don't accept your belief that your friend is psychic or that, or whatever it is that you're presenting at that time. How do they respond when you present the approaches, when you present them that self-reflection? Here, I've tested it this way, this way, this way, and this way. What kind of response do you get from that? Or are you saying that many in the skeptical community can be kind of dogmatically skeptical, which I think is obviously the case? I mean, we're all human beings, and human beings can even do the right thing for the wrong reasons and that kind of thing. But do you find that self-reflection, being able to present that to others, do you think that you're being still unfairly judged at that point? And are you open to the possibility that maybe you are not being as skeptical of your own beliefs as you might be of someone else's?
As to your last, can you repeat the last question you had?
Sure. I asked, are you open to the possibility that you are not seeing yourself in the same way that you might look at others? Are you being more critical on others' beliefs and maybe less critical? And I'm not suggesting that you're doing this. I'm just asking, are you open to that possibility?
Well, yes, absolutely. I am open to that possibility, and I come, as I said, I call myself an agnostic anti-theist. The agnostic part for me is kind of backwards from the way you would usually use it. But I am now I'm getting confused.
Sure. Well, I know that this is all getting kind of far ranging. So, Tucker, if you'll forgive me for kind of just rushing right into one particular point, maybe we can bat that around just a little bit before we move on to the next call. And I suppose what I want to ask is the question of how is it possible that your sister could be psychic when we have billions of people on the planet, many of whom have claimed to be psychics themselves, but not one of which has ever been able to empirically demonstrate psychic ability? How does your skepticism balance that or maintain that belief in your sister's psychic abilities when no one ever has been able to demonstrate psychic powers?
Well, it's definitely not my sister. It's a very good friend of mine.
Misunderstood. Okay, sure.
All I have are my experiences.
Well, I hear you, but you have more than your experiences, right? You have at least some amount of access to all of the experiences, all of the research science, all of the data, all of the thoughts and opinions, good, bad, or otherwise, of this incredibly advanced society that we've built. You know, you have more than just your experiences to help you evaluate these truth claims, and you can choose or not choose to use those things. You can take the experiences that you have and you can say that they are very important, slightly important, not important at all, in contrast with all the data sets and the research and the everything else here. But you have more than just what you yourself have witnessed in the room. Yeah.
I have access to it, yes.
So without, trying to ask you to prove or disprove your friend's psychic ability, in answer to Scott's question about are you being skeptical, are you applying that same level of curiosity to these issues as you might apply to other problems? How do you respond?
Because I I am constantly trying to falsify those experiences, and you know past studies um, don't help me with that. Okay, because um, yeah, I know that psychic powers have never been empirically proven, and I don't believe we ever would be able to. Um,
Hmm. So it's not just like a black swan consideration. It's more that there is something unique about quote psychic ability that just defies scientific convention. So this is a inevitable thing that we will always be struggling with.
mhm. Yeah. I really wanted to have a discussion of about your uh, opening statement, um, and I was hoping to use my experiences to, highlight that.
Okay, well,
Um,
fair enough. I do know that we do have some other calls on the line, but I'd love to give you an opportunity
yeah.
before we wrap up here to respond to that monologue I gave at the beginning, and I'd love to hear what you thought.
No, not right now. I'll let somebody else come up and speak. Thank you guys for taking
Okay.
my call.
Well, fair enough. Thank you so much for opening up and being vulnerable enough to share some of these ideas with us. Take good care.